What if Kayla was the true Volturi queen? Hey, today I am reading What If Kayla Was the True Volturi Queen. So let's get started. I grinned as I pulled into Uncle Charlie's house. I couldn't wait to see Bella and Charlie. I got out of my royal blue 2012 Silverado truck and grinned at Bella as she pulled into the driveway with Jacob. I waved and she jumped out of her truck and tackled me in a hug. Kayla, what are doing here? Bella asked, and I smiled as I helped her off the ground, then glanced at Jacob, who was watching us closely. I came to visit a little while. I got tired of all the different people knocking on my door looking for my help, so I am here for an escape. I said, smiling at her. All right, no problem, she said. She about to say something else when we heard someone squeal. Bella, Edward thinks you're dead. He went to the Volturi to end his life, a pixie-like vampire said as she ran at full speed to Bella. You're the only one he won't see coming, she added. Then she glanced at me and I grinned evilly at her. All right, Alice, I will help you then I am done, Bella said. I watched as she ran inside and grabbed a bag along with her ID and passport. Don't worry, Jacob, I will go with her and make sure she is all right, I whispered to him. He nodded, then took off. And you are? Alice asked. I glared at her. I am Kayla, Bella's cousin, and she is not leaving without me, I said sternly. They will kill you on sight, Alice said, shaking her head. I laughed at her. Do the kings of your kind have wives? I asked, watching her. Yes, why? She asked as we waited. Since they have wives, I am not worried about my life, I said as I grabbed my bag from my truck and waited for them in Alice's car. Bella raced out of the house, then we took off. I watched over Bella as we raced through Volterra to get to the clock tower. Alice stopped the stolen car. Bella and I got out, then raced the rest of the way to the clock tower. I watched as Bella finally got Edward away from the edge of the light. I followed them into the building. I watched as 3 cloaked figures came out of the corridors. Come along, Arrow is waiting, the female said. We turned and followed her. I followed behind Edward and Bella, watching him quietly. Sister, you were sent for one and come back with 2 vampires and 2 humans, I am guessing, her twin brother said. Jane, you are a joy to me, the king in the middle said. I glanced around quickly and noticed the queens standing behind the thrones, watching everything going on around them with interest. I am Arrow. This is Marcus, and Cos, Arrow said. I nodded along with Bella. Pleasure, I said, smiling at Cos, who seemed to look at with interest. Then I went back to watching Edward. So Bella is alive after all. I do love happy endings, Arrow said, then glanced at me with interest. And who are you? He asked, watching me as I continued to stare at Edward. Kayla Swan, Bella's cousin, I said as I turned to him, smiling. Interesting, he said. I watched as Cos stood and stared at me. Do you know what we are? Cos asked. I looked him in the eyes. I do, I said simply. Who told you of our kind? You were either supposed to be killed or turned. Marcus said, and I smiled at him. Well, the first vampire I met found out about my power and decided it was too much of a risk to lose, but told every vampire she could about me, I said, laughing at the look on Sierra's face when she saw my front yard filled with vampire females and males. What do you mean? Cos asked as he stepped closer to me, then sniffed my neck. I grinned at him, knowing he was making sure I was his mate. I have the gift to make female and male vampires fertile, I said, looking up at the queens as they stopped talking and stared at me. Alice gasped. I knew of Rosalie, she desperately wanted children, but she never came to me. How does that work? Marcus asked, knowing that that is the one regret his mate has. Well, sire, I am very particular of who I give this gift to. I do not give it to females who have no mate, or mates who will not take care of the child. So I search their minds. If the parents are up to my standards, I give the gift to both. I can give the gift to only the females, but it works better if I gift both mates. I said, smiling at him, then glanced at Bella, who moved closer to me and away from Edward. I mean, the males of your race can have children with human women, but the children would end up living without their mothers, since a human woman cannot survive the birthing of a half-vampire child. I added, looking around the room at the mated pairs talking to each other about the possibility. Would you blessing us, child? I glanced up at the vampire queens. May I have your names? I asked sweetly. Of course, my dear, I am Queen Athenadora, the first Eros mate, and this is Queen Didymus, Marcus mate, she said. I nodded, then stepped closer to them and looked at the kings. May I touch your mates? I asked. When they nodded, I glanced back at Bella and Edward. I noticed Edward was inching his way closer to Bella while watching out for Cos, who still stood next to Bella watching me. King Cos, can you watch Bella? Edward is getting awfully close to her for my liking, I said. Cos glanced at Edward, then Bella, and nodded to me. I walked closer to Athenadora and placed my hand on her head and searched her mind for anything that would tell me that she would be cruel and neglect the children she could have. All I found was a deep desire to have children of her own, love and compassion she could give any children. I placed my hand on her stomach and blessed her with my gift. I did the same for Didymu and found the same thing. After I blessed the women, I walked to the kings. Your Majesties, I need to do the same to you, I whispered. They both nodded, then stood in front of me. I placed my hand on Eros' head and searched, finding the same things as I found in the women. I blessed him along with Marcus. It is done, I said, then stepped back only to be brought back in fierce hugs. Is there anything we need to know about our pregnancies or afterwards? Didymu asked, and I nodded. I only have to give the gift once to a mated pair. You guys will be fertile as long as you live. The children will be in the womb for 3 months. Their births will be like that of a human woman, but after they are born they will grow, learn, and get hurt like humans. They will eat human food, and drink human blood once, maybe twice a day. When they hit 18 they will become full vampires. I said, then stepped back to Bella and smiled at her. Would you mind going through our female guard and see what you can do? Athenadora asked. I smiled at her. I will only deal with mated couples and they both have to be in agreement, I stated, then sat down hard on the floor and grabbed my head. I felt really dizzy. Kayla, Bella yelled. I looked up at her as she rushed to me and knelt next to me, and I smiled at her. I am all right, just dizzy, I said, looking up at Cos, who put his arms around me and helped me up. Come sit by the throne, my dear. Jane, grab her a pillow please, he said. As Jane returned with the pillow, I sat down on it next to Kai's throne and smiled as he played with my hair. May I ask a question? I looked up at Jane and nodded. Of course, what is it? I asked. She knelt down in front of me. I am a little worried, with the queens wanting children, some of the female guards, and my own desire to have children. Where would we go for medical treatment, the birthing of our children, as the children grow, and advice? She asked. I glanced around and noticed everyone was worried all of a sudden. What about Carlisle? He has medical training, Alice said, looking at me with hatred. I know he does, but he has no experience with vampires having children or any medical equipment that could be used on vampires in case for some reason a C-section needs to done. I said. Bella grinned at me, since she knew I had tons of experience and equipment for vampires, plus Bella has been my assistant on many cases with me. Then where could we turn? No one in this room has ever had children before their change, Jane said, really worried now. I sighed and looked at Bella. When she nodded, I smiled gratefully to her. I will help you. I have the equipment, knowledge, experience, and a degree as a OB/GYN. Plus Bella has experience as well. She used to visit me in the summers and be my assistant. I said, smiling at Jane. Kayla, how are we going to get your equipment? It's all still at your house, right? Bella asked, stepping closer to me and sat next to me. I could ask Jake and Paul to send it all to me. We might need them, I said, thinking back to all the pregnancies I have seen and went through, and denials for giving the gift. We might need the protection. Why? Bella asked. I smiled at her. I know your Majesties will not like this, but the shapeshifters might be of some help. You see, a lot of the pregnancies I have been through with a lot of different women, they become very hostile when giving birth. So we might need the extra hands to hold the women down. Plus Bella and I will need extra protection in case I deny a couple to have children. I said, looking at the queens who I had already blessed. Why do we need the help? I mean, we all can help with holding the queens down. Plus there are plenty of guards here to protect you girls. Felix said as he came up to Jane and held her around her waist. Yes, you could, but most of you will be more worried about the queens not getting hurt. The shifters will be there more to ensure Bella and my safety during the birthings. I said. They all nodded, agreeing. What will you need for you to get everything set up? Arrow asked as he watched his wife and Didymu grab some paper to write down everything that I would need to set up my own small hospital here in the castle. I will need a large enough room to hold at least 10 twin-sized beds, plenty of blankets and sheets, tons of bandages of all sizes, lots of gaze, alcohol, 10 incubators, tons of baby blankets, blue and pink, medications, and tons of towels. Basically everything needed for a hospital. You might have to call Carlisle to get everything or research what hospitals need. Bella and I will get everything needed for the babies for after they are born and as they grow. Since they will be more human as they grow, they will still get sick and hurt as they grow. Jake and Paul, I am sure, will bring everything from my basement, a lot of my equipment I invented for the use of vampires, so only I have them. I said, smiling as Bella nodded to her job. Bella, are you absolutely sure you want to be my assistant again? I asked. She nodded and I sighed. Very well, Alec will show you to the second ballroom. That room can be transferred into a hospital. Bella, you and Kayla will go shopping online for everything you need and have it delivered here. Kayla, once you get to the room, tell Dimitri everything that you want done to the room to your specifications. Good luck, Cos said. I nodded. I kissed his cheek and went to stand with Bella when Edward reminded us he was there. Bella is not staying here, she is coming home with me so we can fix our relationship. Bella and I will go now. I turned and looked at him like he was an idiot. He started moving towards Bella when I stepped in front of him, stopping him in his tracks. Oh, I forgot about you, Arrow said, laughing, which made everyone else laugh. Kayla, what do you think? Cos asked. I looked up at him and stroked his cheek and smiled. Marcus, you see Bonds, correct? I asked, glancing at him. He looked over at me and nodded. Yes, my dear. Why? He asked, walking over to me. I looked around because the kings and queens were now surrounding me, trying to hear what I had to say. I want to know if Edward is really Bella's true mate, I said, looking up at him. Marcus concentrated on Edward, then Bella. No, my dear, he is not, Marcus said. I looked over at Edward. He and Alice were arguing and I could hear their thoughts. I told you, you idiot, that she would find out you were not her true mate. But if she finds out my Jasper is, I will kill her before she can have him. I say we lock those two up for keeping true mates apart and deal with them once Bella's true mate arrives. Can I borrow a phone so I can get my equipment here and fix this mess those two idiots did to my cousin? I said, smiling evilly at Edward and Alice. How do you know they were keeping true mates apart? Arrow asked, looking at me astonished. On top of being a doctor for vampires and children, I am also a very powerful witch with many powers. One of them just so happens to be reading minds. I know who Bella's real mate is. She has met him, but those two kept them apart on purpose. I will get her real mate here, you can believe that, I said, glaring at Alice, who glared back at me. I watched as Arrow glided down to Edward and touched his hand, then to Alice. Arrow shook his head, then looked back at me and sighed. You are right, my dear Felix, take them to the dungeon. They will await Bella's real mate before they are sentenced. He said. I could tell he wanted them on his guard, but they would have stabbed him in the back the moment they could. Come with me, Dr. Swan, I will take you to the new hospital wing for you to get it set up, then show you to your office. Alex said. I nodded. Bella and I followed him out. I looked around the room when we arrived. I smiled. It was big enough. Bella handed me my sketchbook. I smiled at her, then started sketching out how I wanted the room. Alec, are the other rooms in this wing available for my use as well? I asked him as I finished the sketch and handed it to Dimitri, who nodded and took off to get everything I needed ready, delivered, and have everything built. Yes, why? He asked as he showed us the rest of the rooms. I nodded, satisfied that I wouldn't need to do much to the rooms. Well, I could use these rooms as birthing rooms. I mean, no woman wants to give birth in a room full of people. Plus, in these rooms the women can have privacy to take care of their children until they are well enough to go back to their own rooms. I said, then started making a list of what I need for my office, Bella's office, and the private birthing rooms. I looked up when Athenadora came into the hospital room with 2 laptops. For your online shopping, and here are your black credit cards. Get everything you need, including clothes for both of you and other accessories. Alec will show you to your rooms when you are done. Get new cell phones as well. She said, then left. We both looked down at the cards and they had our names on them. I shrugged and started shopping. 4 hours later everything was ordered, then I followed Alec to my room, which was in the medical wing along with our offices, to make my calls. I called Jake first, smiling when I pressed send. Hello, he asked. Jake, it's Kayla. I need you and Paul to go to my house and pack up everything in the basement and ship it to me at this address. Then I need you two to pack up your own things and come here. I need your protection for me and Bella during birthings. I said, knowing he knew what I was talking about. Paul and Jake were part of a few birthings after I realized how dangerous the women got when they were in pain. Sure, but you know Sam will be very angry with both of his best guys leaving, he said, and I grinned. He'll be fine. I sent him some money to help the tribe that should shut him up for a while. Thanks, Jake, your tickets will be waiting at the airport tomorrow, I said, then we hung up. I placed my call to Carlisle since I didn't have the number to Jasper himself. "Hello," Carlisle asked. "Yes, this is Dr. Swan. I need to speak with a Mr. Whitlock, please," I said, grinning when I heard his intake of breath. "Sure, one moment. Jasper, Dr. Swan is looking for Mr. Whitlock." I grinned bigger when I heard gasps in the family. "Yes, this is Mr. Whitlock. How may I help you?" Jasper asked. I sat on my bed. "Are you alone, Jasper?" I asked. I could hear him moving around. "I am now." "Who is this?" he asked. I looked up as Bella came into the room with bags and packages. I nodded to her as guards came in with more packages. Once they were done, I patted the bed next to me for Bella to sit down. When she did, I turned back to my conversation with Jasper. "Jasper, my name is Kayla Swan. I am Bella's cousin. We are both in Italy, where we will both be staying for a while. You are needed here, Major. Your mate awaits you," I said, smiling at Bella. "Is Alice all right?" he asked with a hint of despair and concern in his voice. I saw a tear run down Bella's cheek. I patted her hand and smiled. "Ah yes, your wife. Well, she will be going on trial along with Edward for keeping mates apart from one another," I said. I heard his intake of breath. "I knew it. How is Bella? Is she all right? What are they going to do to you guys since you're human and you know of our existence?" he asked. I smiled at Bella as she giggled. "She is fine and we will be fine. They are allowing us to live here since I will be some of the women's doctor and Bella has agreed to be my assistant. I could also use your help and knowledge since I know you have a few doctrines in biology and medicine. Oh, and please bring Rosalie and Emmett. I have a gift for them," I said. I could hear him talk to Rose and Emmett. "We will be there in 2 days," he said, then hung up. "Now that is done, let's get some rest, then we can set up everything tomorrow afternoon," I said. Bella nodded, then left to go to her room. I looked around at all the packages and bags on the floor. I sighed, then put everything away. I laid down and fell asleep. I woke up the next morning to someone knocking on the door. I opened the door and some maids came inside and set my breakfast on the small table next to the window, then left. I ate breakfast, showered, then dressed in black shorts, and a blood-red tank top, and white tennis shoes. I pulled my knee-length black hair up in ponytail, then I walked into the hospital room and noticed everything was designed the way I wanted it. I noticed 20 boxes against one wall, and another 50 against another. There were 10 twin-size beds with wooden frames against one wall, and on the last wall more boxes and tons of bags. I looked up when Bella came in with Jane, Alec, Felix, and Dimitri. "Since you will be taking care of most of the women here, we thought the least we could do is to help you set up," Jane said, smiling, then looked around and laughed. "Kayla, the medical equipment you ordered just arrived and your medical equipment is somewhere in here," Felix said. I nodded, then we all got to work. Once everything was put away and the beds were set up, we started going through my equipment and I smiled at the curious looks everyone was giving me. "Kayla, what is this?" Jane asked. I looked up at her and smiled. "That machine is like the ultrasound you get at a human doctor, but this one is made for vampires. I will be able to check the progress of the child in your womb, and I will even be able to tell you if it is a boy or girl. I will even be able to give you their first pictures," I said, smiling again as her eyes lit up and she looked at Felix. "Can you bless us, Doc?" Felix asked. I looked up at him and nodded. I stood placing my hand on their heads and then their stomach. "Good luck," I said, smiling as they vanished. Everyone was laughing as we finished putting everything away. A few hours later, Bella and I were organizing baby blankets in a cabinet. "Kayla," I looked up sharply and noticed Arrow was carrying Athenadora, who was out cold. "Place her on the bed and tell me what happened," I said as I checked her over. "Bella, get the handheld heart monitor," I said. Bella rushed off. "I don't know what happened, she just fainted." "I mean, vampires don't faint," Arrow yelled. I looked at him and he was very upset and worried. "All right, Arrow, you must calm down. You are not helping Dora with you being stressed out and freaking out," I said. I looked up when Marcus and Cos with most of the guard rushed into the room just as Bella passed me the heart monitor and gelled the end of the wand. I pulled Dora's shirt up a little and moved her pants out of the way. I placed the wand on her stomach and smiled at the erratic heartbeat. "What is that noise? Are we under attack by bugs?" Arrow asked, looking around frantically. Bella laughed and I giggled. "No, Arrow, that, my dear, is the sound of your baby's heartbeat," I said, smiling down at Dora, who just woke up. I grabbed a towel and cleaned her off and helped her sit up. I glanced at Arrow, who was still standing there with his mouth open. "Felix, grab him," I yelled. Felix grabbed him just as he was about to go down in a faint. Put him on the bed next to Dora. Don't worry, he'll be fine. This happens often with new dads, human and vampire, so it seems, I said through my laughs. Dora, I want you to take these, they are prenatal vitamins every day, they help with a healthy baby growth and development. No missions for a while, no fighting, try to keep your stress level down. Other than that you can resume your normal activities. Come back next week for an ultrasound, maybe we will be able to see what you will be having then. If you have any questions or problems, see me immediately. I said. She nodded, then looked at her husband and shook her head laughing. Bella, you know what to do, I said. She nodded and left the room. Bella came back a few minutes later with a really hot-looking towel, then threw it on Arrow's face and hid behind Felix, who laughed at his king as he flew off the bed into the floor. Dora, are you all right? Arrow asked after he glared at everyone that was laughing. I am fine, Arrow. I know my limits, and if I need anything or questions I know where to go, she said. I nodded. I smiled as they left with most of the guard. Bella helped me clean up the mess. I glanced at Marcus, who looked really worried. What is it, Marcus? I asked, putting my hand on his arm, looking at him in concern. Will Didem be like that? I mean, she is tired more than ever, but I don't know what I would do if she faints like that, he said. I thought about it for a moment. You say she has been tired lately? I asked when he nodded. Why don't you go ahead and bring her here so I can check her? You need to remember something, not every pregnancy is the same, I said. He nodded and ran out. I walked over and grabbed the heart monitor and the gel and set them on the table beside one of the beds with a towel. I looked up when Marcus came in with a very tired-looking Didem in his arms. Marcus laid her down on the bed. I pulled her shirt up a bit and moved her pants. I placed the wand on her stomach, and sure enough, you could hear the fluttering of a little heartbeat. I smiled at her, then Marcus. Congratulations, the baby sounds very healthy. If you feel you need to sleep, do it. I know it's weird, but if that is what your body is telling you, lay down, sleep. Here are prenatal vitamins, take them every day. They will help the baby grow strong. If you have any questions or problems, come to me immediately. Come back next week and we will do an ultrasound to see if we can see what you will be having. I said. They nodded and smiled at me, thanking me for helping them. Don't worry, as long as nothing hits your stomach you will be fine. Make sure you tell Arrow too, your stomachs are more sensitive than the rest of you. Be careful, if you do get hit, come to me right away and I will make sure nothing hurt the baby. Other than that you can do what you normally do. I added. They nodded and left. I cleaned up the mess and put fresh blankets on the beds that were used. I went into my office and started putting it together, and making the appointments for the queens. I smiled when I looked at my phone and realized Gianna had programmed everyone's direct lines into my office phone and my new cell phone that I located in the middle of my desk. I made my calls to the kings and let them know when their wives' appointments were. Then I continued to put my office to how I wanted it. Few hours later, I finally had everything together when my office phone rang. Dr. Swan, I answered. Dr. Swan, Jasper and his family are here asking for you, Gianna, the receptionist said. All right, Gianna, have Dimitri show them to my office, please. I said, then hung up. I looked around, then walked to my room. I changed into black dress slacks, a white blouse, and my white lab coat, and black high-heeled shoes. I walked back to my office, which was across the hall from my room. I noticed that they had not arrived yet, so I took down my hair and brushed it. My deep red highlights stuck out like a sore thumbs, but I loved it. I have been thinking about cutting my hair for a while, so I might do that tonight. I looked up when I heard a knock. Come in, I said. I stood from my chair and smiled sweetly as I saw the rest of Jasper's family came into the room. Dr. Swan. I looked at the father figure of the coven and smiled. How are you, Dr. Cullen? Call me Kayla, please, I said and motioned for them to take a seat. I am well. Can I ask what this meeting is about? Carlisle asked, and I glanced at Jasper. Sure, let me get Bella, I said and went to landline and pushed Bella's office. Yes, Kayla, she said, answered, and I smiled. Can you come to my office, please? I asked. She sighed. Sure, I still have a few things left to organize, but that can wait. I will be right there, she said, then hung up. Sorry, we are still setting up our new offices and the new medical wing in the castle. We have been really busy, I said, then grinned at the shocked expressions on their faces. I thought for a moment, then decided I needed to talk to Cos as well. So I went to my phone again and pushed his number. Yes, my dear, he answered, and I smiled again. I knew what he was to me and me to him. Can you come to my office? I need a king's advice, and the others are busy with their wives. I asked. I looked up as Bella came into the room and smiled at everyone, but her gaze lingered on Jasper. Sure, I will be right there, he said, then hung up. Sorry, I need the king's approval for some of what we need to discuss, I said, smiling, and they nodded. I looked up when someone knocked on the door. I smiled as Jane and Felix came in the room, and she looked ill. What can I do for you, Jane? I asked, walking up to her and put my hand on her forehead. I don't feel real well. Do you mind checking me over? She asked. I smiled at her. No problem. Go lay down on one of the beds in the hospital room and I will be there in a moment to check you out, I said. She nodded and left with Felix right behind her. Kaz came in a moment later and leaned against the wall smiling at me. I winked at him, then faced the Cullens. All right, I don't have a lot of time, so I'll get to the point. Jasper is here for Bella, his true mate. Jasper, have you thought about my offer? I asked, and he nodded. I will be honored to stay here and help you and Bella in the hospital and laps, he said, then pulled Bella into his lap. I nodded and smiled. Why did you want us here? What gift could you possibly give me and Emmett that I don't already have? I have not even been nice to Bella, Rosalie demanded, looking defeated. Rose, I know why you were mean to my cousin, and you will never have to worry about her not being able to bear any children. You see, the gift I want to give you and Emmett is something I know you so desperately want, I said as I knelt in front of her. I placed my hand on her head and found nothing that said she wouldn't love her children unconditionally, and I did the same to Emmett. When I felt they would make great parents, I placed my hands on their stomachs and smiled at them when I was done. What did you do? Esme demanded. I looked at her and glared at her. I gave them back the ability to have children, I said, smiling at them. Rose stood up and hugged me tightly and cried on my shoulder. How do you know it worked? Carlisle asked. I glanced up at him. I have had over 20 successful pregnancies with vampires thanks to me, I said, smiling at Rosalie. All right, back to the reason I asked my mate here. I wanted to know if it was all right to add a few more people to my staff. Bella and I can do a lot for our patients, but we can't do it all. With Jasper's help we can do more, but I would like to add the rest of the Cullens if they agree. I could use an extra doctor for after the children are born, someone who knows computers, a nurse, someone to help fix machines when they break, and another midwife. They will need some training, I said, looking back at Kaz. He seemed to be thinking about it. I walked over to him and leaned against his ear and whispered, it will also give me more time to be with you. His eyes widened and nodded his head quickly. I will have to make sure it is all right with Arrow and Marcus, but once they find out it will give their wives more care, they will agree. Just remember, one discretion and you're dead, he said, kissed my cheek, then left. What did you do when you touched their heads? Jasper asked. Bella answered for me. Kayla has a rule for giving that gift. She searches the mated pair's minds for anything that will tell her that the children would be mistreated, unloved, or neglected. If she sees it, she denies the couples, and she will only work with mated pairs. I smiled at her. Follow us. I need to go check Jane, I said. We all left my office and arrived in the hospital. I smiled at Bella when she handed me the heart monitor. I gelled the wand and pulled Jane's shirt up a little and moved her jeans. I turned on the monitor and placed the wand on her stomach, and we could hear the fluttering of the heartbeat. What is that? Emmett asked, coming closer to me with Rose next to him with the look of awe on her face. That brother bear is Jane and Felix' baby, Bella said, smiling at Jane. The little one sounds good. Bella, get the prenatal vitamins and the motion sickness medication, I said as I cleaned Jane up and sat her up. Okay, Jane. No missions, no fighting. Protect your stomach, it is sensitive. If you get hit, come to me right away and I will make sure no damage was done to the little one. Take the vitamins every day. Take the motion sickness medication whenever you are feeling ill. If you have any questions or problems, come see me. I will make you an appointment for next week to see if we can find out what you are having, I said. She nodded. I handed the medicine to Felix. Felix picked her up and carried her out of the room, and I smiled as Bella and I cleaned up. Is that how it is going to be for all the patients? Rose asked, getting into the idea of working for me. No, Athenadora fainted. Arrow freaked out, then fainted after he found out about his baby. Marcus was scared because Didymu was getting extremely tired, but I told her if she was tired to sleep. Every pregnancy is different, just like human pregnancies. Some are tired, some sick, some just faint. Those are the only cases I have so far. But I am sure we will have more in a couple of days. I have a meeting with the mated guards in a few hours and I am going to need Bella, Jasper, Paul, Jake, Rose, and Emmett with me. Bella, Jasper, Paul, and Jake because they all agreed to work for me. Rose and Emmett, I would like you there for extra protection. Things get a little hostile when I deny someone. I said. I looked up at Esme and Carlisle. They looked confused. I will be honored to work with you, Rosalie said. Thank you. I can put you on as a nurse and the mechanic for the machines. A lot of my equipment I invented so I can do those, but the others, I have no clue about, I said, giggling at the end. I will be happy to work with you as well, Emmett said, wrapping his arm around Rose. Thank you. I can use you on the computers making appointments and such, also some time working on research on illnesses for when the children are born. I said. He nodded and smiled. That will be your desk right there. The phone has the main numbers to the Kings, me, and Bella. There is also a little book in the first drawer for the other numbers in case we have children in here but their parents need to be contacted. You can set up the computer any way you feel you need to. I said. He nodded, then wandered over to take a look. Why not us? Esme asked. I smiled at her. I knew she was asking why her and Carlisle were not invited to the meeting. Because you two need to discuss whether you want children and if you are both willing to work for me, I said, smiling as Paul and Jake rushed into the room. They hugged Bella and I and smiled at the Cullens, shaking their hands. Thanks for the help, guys, I whispered, and they smiled. No problem, little sis. Now how many cases do we have so far? Paul asked, throwing his arm around my shoulders. 3. 2 of the Queens and Jane. I just gifted Rose and Emmett, so we have to wait for them. And I have a meeting with the mated couples in an hour, which you have to be there. I don't think my mate will like me being hurt, I said, smiling when Bella and the others laughed. You found your mate cool. Who is he? Jake asked. The third Volturi king, I said, grinning like a fool. Paul and Jake looked shocked for a moment, then smiled at me. Congratulations, Kay. You deserve to be happy after everything, Paul said, then grinned sheepishly when Kaz came into the room. He was looking at me. Is it time already? I asked, breaking the tension. Yes, my dear. Have you had time to organize your staff yet? He asked as we all walked to the throne room. Not all of them, love, I said, smiling at him. We walked into the throne room. I noticed the queens were not there, but the room was filled with mated couples waiting for me. I will tell you their positions in a moment. Most of them here are for my protection though. I whispered to him and he nodded. I stood by the thrones and watched everyone as Kaz went back to his throne. Everyone, you were called here because we have discovered a new gift among us and she has agreed to stay here with her cousin and staff. Kayla Swan, step forward please. Arrow said. I smiled at him and stepped forward. Dr. Swan has the gift to make mated couples fertile and produce healthy children, Arrow continued. I heard gasps. I glanced around. I already knew of one couple I was not giving any children to. Dr. Swan, would you be so kind and tell everyone who your staff is and your requirements for this to work with each couple? Arrow asked. I nodded to him and smiled at everyone else. I am Kayla Swan. I am a doctor for vampires and their children. I am the main one working for the health and safety of the women and children. Bella Swan, my cousin, is my assistant. She will be there to take any information you might think is important and answer any questions or concerns you might have. Jacob Black is a shapeshifter. He is Bella's extra security. Paul Meroz is also a shapeshifter. He is my extra security. Jasper Whitlock is Bella's mate and he will be helping me with research, lab work, and as an extra doctor. Rosalie Hale is a friend of ours along with being my nurse and mechanic. Emmett McCarty is Rosalie's mate and our computer guru. The requirements, I don't really have any. Someone will call you and your mate up and I will touch your head and I will decide if you deserve this gift or not. Both mates have to be in agreement and I will have to touch both mates. If you fail the test I will inform you why if you wish. If you pass my test I will touch your stomach, then you are free to have children for as long as you wish. Jasper and I will be working on contraceptions to prevent too many pregnancies for the women. I said, looking up at Arrow, nodding for him to proceed. Bianca and Dimitri, Arrow called. I smiled at Dimitri and noticed Bianca was still human. Are you going to turn Bianca before conception? And are both in agreement this is what you want? I asked. Dimitri looked down at Bianca and she nodded. We want to make sure that after I am turned I will still be able to have children, she said. I nodded at her. I plan to turn her in a week with the king's permission, of course, Dimitri said. I smiled at him. And we are both very sure we want children, Bianca added as Dmitri nodded. I stepped forward. Placing my hand on Dmitri's head, I smiled at him, then did the same to Bianca and smiled at her. I will give you the gift, but it will have to wait until after she is a year into the vampire lifestyle. If I did it now, it could end her life. When she is stable in the vampire lifestyle, come see me and you will be blessed as soon as possible, I said. Dmitri nodded understanding, and so did Bianca. If there are any more human vampire mates, remember what I said. I cannot give the gift now because of the dangers, but you still need to be careful. You men are still fertile and any pregnancy with a human woman will kill her. Please be careful, I added, looking at everyone, and they nodded. Renata and Alec Arrow called. I smiled at Alec, he became very helpful to me and Bella. I placed my hand on Alec and grinned at what I found. He was a good man. I did the same for Renata. I found her compassion and love for children had saved many that came through the throne doors. For your selflessness in saving so many children, I will give you the one thing you both so desperately want, I whispered, then placed my hand on their stomachs and smiled as they hugged me and thanked me. I wiped my eyes, noticing tears had escaped. Jasper walked up and laid his hand on my shoulder. I am all right, they really deserve to be happy. I whispered to him and he nodded, then moved back to Bella and nodded to Cos. Gianna and Corin Arrow called. I glanced up and grinned at them. I placed my hand on their heads and found nothing but compassion and love. Come see me when Gianna is 1 year into vampire life and you will receive this very special gift. I said. They nodded and hugged me, smiling as they walked away. Chelsea and Afton Arrow called. I looked at them and shook my head at them. I do not have to put my hand on your head to know what kind of people you are. I know about the visits to the children's hospital and orphanages trying to help underprivileged children. My gift to you is going to light your world up, I said, placing my hands on their stomachs and smiled at them. They tackled me in a hug, then helped me up off the floor, laughing the whole time. I am fine. Wow, that never happened before, I said, laughing, then got dizzy. I have been using my powers too much. I shook my head and grinned at Paul, who was ready to catch me. Heidi and Santiago Arrow called. I sighed, knowing this was going to get ugly. I placed my hand on their heads, then backed away. No, I said, looking up at Arrow, Marcus, and Cos, who looked back worried. Paul stepped forward. Jake stepped next to Paul while the others stayed with Bella. What do you mean no? Santiago asked. I knew he was a good man and would care for any children he was given. I would give you children in a heartbeat, but I refuse to give them to her. She has nothing but darkness in her soul. She hates children with a passion. She also plans to kill all children born within the castle, including the princesses and princes. I will not give her any of her own. Plus, she is not your true mate. Chelsea dear, can you see their bond? Tell me what you see. I said, looking at Chelsea, and she stepped forward, then stared at Heidi in disgust. Her bonds are fake. Someone made those bonds and it was not me. I would never make a mate bond to someone who was not mates, she said, looking scared at Arrow. I know you didn't, hun, but can you break them? She does not deserve such a kind-hearted man, I said to her. She nodded. I smiled when the bond was broken. I watched as Heidi was dragged away, then looked at a broken-hearted Santiago. Listen to me, Santiago. A friend of mine is on her way here. Her name is Sierra. She is unmated and a good woman. If she is your mate, come to me right away and you will get what you have wanted for so long. No questions asked, I said. He nodded and hugged me, then walked away with a smile. Kayla, why not ask me about her bonds? Marcus asked as I sat down on the floor, tired as hell. Marcus, you see bonds, but you would not be able to tell if they were fake or real. That's why I asked Chelsea. She can tell the difference. And until Heidi is disposed of, keep a very close eye on your mates, and someone has to inform Felix, Jane, and the wives. We will tell Esme and Carlisle, I said. Then Paul helped me up and walked me to my room. I looked up and saw Dmitri. Dmitri, are there 2 empty rooms around my room? I want to keep Paul and Jake close to Bella and I asked. He looked thoughtful for a moment. Yes, there is a room next to your office and hers that Paul and Jake they can use, he said, then motioned for Paul to follow him. Go on, I will be fine after some rest, I said. He nodded, then followed Dmitri out. I walked to my stand-up mirror and grabbed my hair scissors and cut my hair. Now it stopped in the middle of my back and is more manageable. I changed into short black shorts and a black tank top. I disposed of the extra hair and curled in my bed and fell asleep. I woke up to someone knocking on my door. I opened the door for the maids as they brought in my breakfast. I sat down and ate. When I was done I showered, then dressed in tight hip hugger jeans, a light blue blouse, blue high heels, and my lap coat. I brushed my hair, then pulled it back into a ponytail. I smiled as I walked into my office and finished getting it together. I sat down in my chair and smiled. I knew Jasper moved into Bella's room and I was curious as to how Cos and I were going to arrange that. I wanted to stay in the medical wing so I could be closer to my patients, and I am sure he wants to stay in the royal wing. I looked over as my phone started ringing. "Dr. Swan," I said, and I heard an intake of breath. "Dr. Swan, it's Santiago. I found my mate," he said, and I smiled. "Come on over, bring her with you and I will see what I can do for you," I said, smiling when he agreed, then hung up. I sat there for a moment, then the knock brought me out of my thoughts. "Come in." I looked up as the door opened and in walked Santiago and Sierra. "Well, I'll be damned. How are you, Sierra?" I asked, hugging her and Santiago. "I am good. Santiago told me what happened yesterday, and you know how I've always wanted children," she said, looking at the floor. "Sierra, you do understand why I denied you the first time, right?" I asked as I leaned against my desk. "Yes, I know. You believe no woman should have to raise her children on her own," she said as they sat down in the chairs across from me. "You are right. You see, my mother got pregnant and my father ran off when he found out. My mother turned to sex and drugs because of it. I raised myself much like Bella, but very different. I don't believe any child should grow up like that. That's why I have the standards I do." "But I have already gifted both of you," I said, smiling when they looked confused. "When?" Santiago asked. I smiled bigger at him. "When you both hugged me when you first came in. I just wanted you guys to understand why I have the standards I do," I said as I turned to the window and saw Didim painting in the garden. I smiled down at her. "We understand, thank you, Kayla," Sierra said. I nodded and they left. I wiped my face as the tears started falling. "You know you need to stop blaming yourself for your childhood." I turned and looked at Paul. "Yeah, I know, but it's hard when my mother killed herself telling me she hated me and my father," I whispered. "Your mother was a bitch, but look at what you're doing. You are giving women the children they would die for, and giving them a chance to have a family," Paul said as he walked towards me and leaned against the window I was standing in front of. "Look," he said, pointing at Marcus, who just joined Didim. Marcus was smiling and talking into her belly and laughing with her. "You know he has not been that happy in decades. You made that possible. You are a gift to these people," Paul said. He grabbed me and hugged me tight. "Thanks, Paul. You were always the brother I have always wanted and sometimes dread of having," I said, laughing at him. I heard the door open and I turned to look at Cos. The look on his face told me he heard everything. "I will see you at the hospital," Paul said, then slipped out after I nodded to him. "Kayla, I know you had a rough life, but I am here to help make it better if you let me," he said as he moved to me. "I would love that. Thank you for everything that you have done," I whispered into his chest. "You are more than welcome, my dear. Now let's get you to work so I can as well," he said, laughing. I laughed with him. "Cos, when we mate, where are you wanting to be? Here in the medical wing or the royal wing?" I asked as we walked through the hall. "I think here would be good. I mean, you need to be close to the birthing rooms and hospital in case of an emergency, at least until you are changed," he said as we stopped in front of the doors to the hospital. "You're right, I need to be here at least while I am still human," I said, smiling at him. I stood on my toes and kissed him sweetly on the lips. I turned and started to head in when I was grabbed and pulled back into Cos, who crashed his lips to mine. I felt his tongue run across my bottom lip asking for entrance. I happily gave it. His tongue devoured my mouth in the most sensual kiss I have ever gotten. Cos pulled back and smiled at me. He hugged me tight, then gave me a chaste kiss and headed off to the throne room. I smiled, then headed into the hospital room where everyone was watching me with their mouths open. I giggled and got ready for the day. I looked up as Alec came through the door with Renata right behind him, laughing at his eagerness. "What can I do for you?" I asked as I stepped away from Emmett and went to Alec. "Can we talk privately?" he asked, and I ushered him to a separate room and smiled at him as he had Renata sit on the bed. "What is it, Alec?" I asked as I watched Renata. "I don't know how much more I can take. All she wants is sex. She wants a baby so bad, and I do as well, but I have to go to work," he said. He looked so desperate. "All right, hold on," I said as I stepped out of the room. "Rose, grab the heart monitor and gel please," I called. She came around the corner with it and walked into the room with me. Renata, lay down for me hun and lift your shirt a little and move your pants down just a little. Thank you, I said. As she did it, I placed the wand on her stomach and smiled at the fluttering heart. Renata, can you hear that? I asked and she nodded. That, my dear, is you and Alex baby. Congratulations. Take these every morning, they will help with your baby's development and growth. If you need anything, let one of us know, okay? Now let Alec go to work. If anything hits your stomach, come see me right away. I said. They nodded and left. I started laughing when I realized what just happened. Rose and I cleaned up the room. We really need someone who can do this for us, I said, smiling at Rose when she nodded. Kayla, I ran out of the room and Didim was holding her stomach and Dimitri was holding her up. What happened? I asked as I ushered them into a room. I am not sure. I found her on the ground outside holding her stomach. Dimitri said. I looked at Didim. Didim, you have to tell me what happened, I said to her. She looked up at me and groaned. Heidi escaped and hit me with something. I didn't see it. She whispered. I nodded. Rose, get the ultrasound machine. Emmett, contact the Kings and Athenadora, tell them to get here now. I yelled. Everyone left. Bella, I need cool rags, she is burning up, I said. When Bella came into the room she nodded and ran off. Soon Marcus was by Didim's side, as was the other Kings and Athenadora. Rose came into the room and turned on the machine, while Bella placed cool rags on Didim's forehead. I put the wand on Didim's stomach and found the baby. I looked him over carefully but found nothing wrong. Congratulations, you have a healthy baby boy, I said, smiling at them. Didim cried and held on to Marcus, who cried with her. Jasper, grab the Motrins please, I said, and Jasper nodded and headed off to the medicine cabinet. Is he really all right? Marcus asked as I continued to look over him. Yes, he looks fine. You see that right there? That is pulsating. That is his heart beating strong and healthy. He is a little bigger than I thought he was. Would you guys like a picture? I asked. Didim nodded frantically. I giggled and printed a few pictures for her. She stared at her son as I cleaned her up. Jasper came back with the medicine and I thanked him. Okay, take 2 these whenever you feel pain. You will be sore for a day or 2, but if you find any spotting, come back right away. I said to her. She looked confused. Spotting? She asked. I looked up at Bella and smiled. If you find any blood in your underwear, if you do, come here right away. I might have to put you on bed rest. If you find any, then you should be fine in a day or 2, but do not go anywhere without someone with you. You had a very close call, I said, and she nodded. I smiled as they left, knowing Dimitri was going to explain what happened. Rose and I started cleaning up. I looked up at everyone. Thanks guys, that went really smooth for our first emergency, I said, giggling. I looked up when Kaz came into the hospital with a girl about 17 years old. Kayla, this is Bree Tanner. She came here looking for a job. I thought maybe you had an extra opening, he said. I glanced at the girl and smiled. How are you at organizing, making beds, and following easy instructions? I asked as I watched her facial expressions. I used to be a housekeeper when I was human. You don't beat your workers, do you? I stared at her with wide eyes, then I looked up at Kaz. Why would you ask that? I asked as I lifted her head so she would look at me. The last place I worked beat their employees when things weren't done quick enough, she said. I stared at her. No honey, I would never lay a hand on you or anyone that works for me. Except for those 2, they are my brothers and deserve a pop in the head for stupid comments, I said, making the girl laugh. The other thing is, the blonde girl is Rosalie. Once in a while you will catch her smack her husband who works on the computer. But other than that, we are all a family here and we work together, I added, and she smiled. Hey, come say hello to Bree Tanner. She is going to be helping with organizing and keeping the rooms clean, I said. Everyone introduced themselves and what they did in the hospital. I knew they all heard the conversation we had, so they were cautious. Kaz, where did you find her? I asked. He pulled me outside the room. I didn't find her. Charlie did and sent her here knowing you girls were here and would help her, he said. I looked up at him. All right, I will call him. Thank you, love. You may have helped save an innocent girl, I said, smiling at him, and kissed him hard. Doctor, sorry to interrupt, but Queen Athenadora is on her way. King Arrow says she won't stop crying and holding her stomach, Bree said. I nodded at her and smiled. Thank you, Bree, I said. She nodded and went back inside. Well, time to go back to work, I said, smiling and kissing him again, then went inside to get ready. I heard Athenadora crying and Arrow trying to soothe her, but nothing he said was working. Come in this one, Bree said as she showed them to the first room. I walked in and looked at Dora and shook my head. I looked in the hall where Rose was since she was checking the supplies in each room. "Rose, bring me the ultrasound machine please," I said. She nodded and took off. "Dora, what seems to be the problem?" I asked as I sat on a stool next to the bed. "I don't know, my stomach keeps cramping and I am scared," she said, and I nodded. I looked up when Rose came into the room with the machine. "Tell Jasper I need some more Motrin," I said. She nodded and took off again. I got the machine ready and prepared Dora with the gel. I put the wand on her stomach. I checked to make sure the baby was all right. I saw nothing wrong with her. Then I noticed every time the baby kicked, Dora would hiss. I giggled a little. I printed some pictures for them and cleaned Dora up. I handed them the pictures and smiled at them when Jasper came in. "Thank you, Jasper," I said as Jasper handed me the bottle, nodding then leaving again. "Dora, the cramps you are feeling are actually the baby kicking you. Arrow, lay your hand here," I said, placing his hand on his baby just as she moved. He looked at me wide-eyed. "Take 2 of these for the pain, but you will still be able to feel the baby move around. Would you like to know what you're having?" I asked. They both looked up at me and nodded. "You are going to have a healthy baby girl, congratulations," I said, then left them to themselves. "Kayla, can I talk to you?" Bella asked. I looked up and nodded. "Emmett, I am going to my office. Call me if anything comes up," I said, walking past him. "You got it, boss," I laughed at him, then entered my office and told Bella to sit. "What is it, Bella? You know you can talk to me about anything," I said as I watched her. "Jasper wants me to be changed next week and I was wondering if you would gift us as well," she asked, looking at the floor. I stood from my chair and walked around my desk and knelt in front of her. "You listen to me, Bella Swan. I know how you feel about having children and I know how Jasper feels. I know all about Jasper's past and I will never hold that against him or you for that matter. You will be the best mother any child could hope for and Jasper would be a great father. After your 1 year is up or you show great control of your urges, I will gift you and Jasper. I promise. I love you, Bella, and all I ever want is for you to be happy. Remember that," I said, hugging her as she cried on my shoulder. I looked up when Jasper came into the room and smiled at me. "Thank you, Kayla," he said, hugging me and Bella close to him. "I meant every word, Jasper. You two will make great parents," I said as I stood up and smiled at Caius as he came in the room with a seductive look on his face. I smiled as I watched Jasper and Bella leave my office and Caius pulled me into his arms. "You are an amazing woman, my love," he said, holding me tight. "And you are an amazing man," I said, grinning at him. "Edward and Alice's trial will begin shortly," he said, and I nodded. "Make sure everyone is there," I said as I took off my lab coat. He nodded, kissed me softly on the lips, then left. I went to my phone and made sure Bella and Jasper knew about the trail. Then I called Charlie. "Hello," he asked. "Uncle Charlie, it's Kayla," I said. I looked up when Rose came through the door with Bree. "Kayla, how are you, child?" he asked while I motioned for the girls to sit down. "I am good. I just wanted to let you know that Bella and I are all right. And Bree arrived and I gave her a job working at the hospital I opened here," I said, grinning at the girl. She smiled at me. "Good, Bree is a good girl. I received a call from Caius and he asked if I wanted a job as private security for you girls. He said you guys are having problems with a few people, and with me having the knowledge of that world, he asked if I wanted to be changed with you girls," he said. I smiled a little. "Well, what do you think? We could use you here and we would love to keep you in our lives," I said, smiling when Bella came in with Jasper, Paul, Jacob, Emmett, Esme, and Carlisle. "I am taking care of a few loose ends, then I will be on a plane to join my girls," he said. I looked up at Bella and she looked confused. Jasper leaned down and whispered in her ear. I watched Bella cry for a moment, then I went back to my conversation with Charlie. "All right, Uncle Charlie, we will see you soon," I said, hanging up with him. "All right, let's get this trial over with," I said, leading everyone out of the door. We walked into the throne room and stood near the thrones. I looked around and most of the women were not there. Arrow stood up to address the room as Edward and Alice stood in the middle with Felix and Dimitri had a hand on their shoulders. "Friends, we are here to sentence Edward Mason and Alice Brandon for the crime of knowingly keeping true mates apart. Isabella Swan and Jasper Whitlock are true mates and were kept apart because of jealousy and greed. How do you plea?" Both Edward and Alice hissed and growled. I laughed. Everyone turned and stared at me. "Forgive me, but they sound like the animals they are," I said, giggling. "Not guilty. Bella belongs to me. Edward saw Ed glaring at me. Not guilty. Jasper is mine. I made what he is. Alice screeched. Jasper was a good man. You turned him into a pansy. Now with Bella he can be himself and actually be happy. Edward, you are an idiot. Bella is not the shy quiet girl you tried to turn her into. She rides motorcycles, smokes, and gets drunk with me. They are finally happy and can be themselves, and I will not let you destroy that happiness. You will have to kill me first. I said calmly. Everyone stopped and stared at me. Edward got loose from Felix and rushed me. I grinned and shot energy out at him, and he flew across the room, landing in front of Peter and Charlotte, who just arrived. Peter picked him up and tossed him back to Felix. "Kay, how are you, girl? Still causing trouble, I see," Peter said, grinning at me, then at the others behind me. "You know it, Pete. How are you and Charlotte doing? All right?" I asked, smiling at a very pregnant Charlotte. "We are good. We are ready to find out what we are having, and we are getting really close to the birth, so we needed the expert vampire doctor," Charlotte said, smiling at me. "I will check everything after the trial," I said as they made their way over to me. Hugs were exchanged, then they stood by me. "All right, Edward and Alice are sentenced to death," Arrow called. "For what?" Alice yelled. "You kept true mates apart, then attacked a future queen." Chaos seethed. I watched as they were ripped apart, then burned. "Let's go to the hospital to check on Charlotte, and I have a few appointments to take care of," I said. Then we all made our way to the hospital. Bree showed Charlotte to a room while I looked over my appointments. I had 3 back-to-back. I walked into the room. Charlotte and Peter were waiting in. Rose was setting up the ultrasound machine. "All right, let's see what you are having," I said, smiling as I moved the wand around. I started laughing at what I saw. "Hey Jasper, come here, you will want to see this," I called. I looked over at Peter. He looked confused and worried. "Sorry, he is training to use my equipment and to being another doctor here," I said, helping to calm his nerves. Jasper came in and smiled at his longtime friends. "What do you see, Jasper?" I asked. He moved closer to me and whispered in my ear. "Is that what I think it is?" I smiled and nodded at him. He started laughing. Then looked back at his friend and laughed harder. "I am sorry, Peter, but you are going to have a hard time with this one," he said, chuckling. "Peter, Charlotte, I would like to introduce you to your twin girls," I said, moving the screen so they could see their children. I watched as Peter's eyes grew wide, then he fell out of his chair in a dead faint. I laughed with Charlotte and Jasper. "Emmett, I need your help," I called, still laughing. Emmett came into the room. He saw Peter on the floor and picked him, putting him on the extra bed. I explained what happened as I printed the pictures for Charlotte, then explained what was going on around the castle. "Dr. Swan, Sierra, and Santiago are here for their checkup," Bree said. I nodded and followed her. The end.